Yes, my name is Susan Hastings. I'm a pediatric physical therapist. I have a private practice in San Jose, California, where I treat mainly children with cerebral palsy using electrical stimulation, and in the past, whole body vibration. I've been moving more towards electrical stimulation because the motor control aspect of it, and that is why I just studied it more and more, because my kids kept improving the further I went and used electrical stimulation.
That's great. So you
Okay.
obviously have a lot of experience working with these children over the last couple of decades. So what kind of symptoms do they have? What are their problems? What do they suffer from? Could you describe a little bit more on that, please?
Okay. Well, yes, what they have a problem of is a lot of them have high tone, hypertonus, or some people call it spasticity. And then they also suffer from poor timing of muscles, general weakness, especially the trunk is always weak. And it's real hard to coordinate all the body segments together. My hope in doing peripheral electrical stimulation, which I ended up using probably 5 device, which is 10 muscle groups, and learning to turn them on in function, especially gait, was to try to get movement patterns going that would help them move more normally, which it did. But it wasn't until I've been using the last 3 years some spinal neuromodulation that it began to be revealed to me that this was the best way to go, and they can motor learn when I'm using it, which was always my primary focus, was to have them motor learn. It's very difficult.
Okay. So other than electrical neuromodulation, which sounds like an important finding, what current therapies do these children have available that's used in clinic?
Well, they lose range. Well, especially as they grow, they lose range of motion at different ankle joint. Their ankle joints, any joint that they're not using very much, which they generally don't. They mainly move in front to back in the sagittal plane, and um, they just really do not like to use rotation very much. So the joints are blocked from not using them. They lose range. So people use what's suggested for therapists to use is Botox, botulinum toxin, and that is a neurotoxin, and it obliterates the motor neuron function, and then the signals for spasticity don't get back up. And but the other thing is, when I say it obliterates that, when we first started using Botox, we thought that it would grow back as long as you treated them um, functionally, and that they would grow new connections. But wasn't the case. It became very disorganized. So, and that what I noticed when was they actually or hypertonus with that. Then the other thing is that's very popular right now is selective dorsal rhizotomy. These are the surgical options, lengthenings. What else? Then serial casting to keep the ankle joint. We use that a lot. Physical therapists do, but the main ones prescribed by physicians are um, regular orthopedic surgery, lengthenings, selective dorsal rhizotomy, and botulinum toxin. So that's mainly what's available. Physical therapists, on the other hand, like to gain range through serial casting. They do a lot of strengthening. They do a lot of balance training.
So what's been your experience using electrical neuromodulation in these children? Can you share some of that with us, please?
Yes. Okay, so I've used it since 2017, though it took a while to figure out how to do it, where I got the kind of results I'm getting now. And it is it's actually one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, in that the child just can move normally when given a functional activity that they want to accomplish. And my input then is, at first I have to come in and help them with it, but gradually they get to where they can just do it by themselves. And it stays even when the neuromodulation is off. They remember the skills that they learned during neuromodulation. It's amazing. And I teach classes in electrical stimulation, and other people, I've taught them a little bit, and they are writing me almost daily, just amazed at what they're seeing.
So what do the children feel like when they're receiving this stimulation? What do the children describe it as?
The children describe it as, well, at the very first, they don't feel it at all, which is, it's misleading. And I would think that it would make therapists want to turn it up more and more and more. But that's not I found that that's not the way to go. Um, and so they don't feel it, but if you're looking at their movements, you can see that their movement improves. For the very first thing you will see is the posture change. And you know how I said that they always needed to have their trunk strengthened, but the very first change you will see is alignment of the trunk. So, and kids, I hadn't uh, probably looked at it enough to realize that they were never staying in midline ever. And that was the one a really big revelation, because even if their trunk is straight, they're doing it just for me. It's not during their functional life. Their head's always over to one side. So they're using their motor patterns in malalignment. And this aligns them. That's the very first thing it does, is align the trunk and gets it so that it can learn new movement.
That sounds amazing. So where do you see this field headed to over the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, it's going to have to be a standard of care for physical therapy. There's just nothing that equals it anywhere. I mean, there's just nothing that can equal it. It's truly amazing. It is beyond anything I ever thought would be possible, if I can say that. And it is every day. I've used it on many children by now, obviously, and it's 100% has worked on every child. The times it doesn't work, I mean, um, there are that I can get it if I get the range. Okay, so one child had Botox, and it's hard. You can see right away that it can't get down to the foot and the ankle, from the spinal neuromodulation. And so you see that interference. I've also seen it anything that's really malaligned. You have to get that first. You have to get the child aligned, and then use the spinal neuromodulation and then that's when it's so unbelievable. I think a lot of therapists think that they can just put it on and that it will just straighten them up and they'll move, because that's what you see in courses, that they're moving nicely. But you really have to look at the alignment first, get that, then you can introduce spinal neuromodulation. And then it's far beyond anything anyone thought was possible.
Great. Well, this has been really enlightening. Thank you, Dr. Hastings, for this. And if there's any other message for our audience.
Well, I just think that it needs to be done in connection with people who know what they're doing. I mean, the very first thing I did was, I looked in the literature, and at the time there wasn't anything available. And I think that experience can help guide people who know, and people who know the spinal cord, which I didn't. I didn't realize how important the spinal cord was. But that was the only literature available for me at the time, and that's where I went and learned as much as I could about it. But if you don't have that background, I think you've got to find a mentor to help you understand it.
Perfect. Well, Dr. Hastings, I'd like to thank you for your time, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Okay. Thank you, Frog.